Amid critical shortages of Tomahawk, Patriot, and THAAD systems, is US Army desperately seeking deployment of untested experimental weapons? After failing spectacularly for 2 straight months, US military leadership demands procurement of new missiles costing $15 million apiece. America prepares to field its first completely unproven long-range hypersonic missile while Iran's resilient forces continue fighting undeterred? US military pursues the Dark Eagle hypersonic missile as Iran's navy consistently outperforms Trump's blockading fleet in Hormuz. Iran's formidable defense capabilities force Washington into extremely costly hypersonic weapon options worth tens of billions overall. The United States is reportedly considering what could be the first-ever deployment of a hypersonic strike weapon to the Middle East, marking a significant shift in its military posture. According to a Bloomberg report on April 29, US Central Command has requested the transfer of the so-called Dark Eagle Long-Range Hypersonic Weapon system to the region. The Long-Range Hypersonic Weapon, or LRHW, may be used against key Iranian military and infrastructure targets, giving Washington a new option for long-range strikes. The capability has faced repeated technical and schedule delays and has still not been officially declared fully operational or battle-ready by the Pentagon. This request underscores growing concerns in Washington that Iran is adapting its battlefield tactics, including dispersing and repositioning launch systems to stay out of range. Reports suggest that Iran has moved some of its missile launchers beyond the effective reach of the precision strike missile, limiting the US ability to respond quickly. Existing conventional systems, with a range of just over 300 miles, may no longer be sufficient to reliably strike these more distant or mobile targets. In contrast, the Dark Eagle hypersonic system is reported to have a range of around 1,725 miles, allowing it to launch from safely rearward bases and still hit deep target networks. Travels at hypersonic speeds of Mach 5 or higher, making it extremely difficult for most air defense systems to detect, track, or intercept in time. Has an estimated range of over 1,725 miles, or about 2,775 kilometers, enabling long-distance strikes on distant military and strategic sites. Uses a hypersonic glide vehicle that separates from the booster and glides toward the target at high speed. Is capable of maneuvering in flight, allowing it to change course and evade fixed interception calculations. Is specifically designed to penetrate advanced air defense and missile defense networks, reducing the odds of successful interception. The move comes despite the fact that a ceasefire between the US and Iran has been in place since April 9, indicating that Washington is preparing for a possible return to large-scale operations. Analysts say such a deployment signals that the US is hedging for renewed conflict if diplomacy with Tehran collapses over the nuclear and maritime standoff. The Dark Eagle system itself is a high-cost, limited-quantity asset, with each hypersonic missile estimated to cost around $15 million. A full LRHW battery, including launchers and support infrastructure, could amount to roughly $2.7 billion, according to US Government Accountability Office estimates. The US has already relied on other advanced weapons such as the Jassmer cruise missile during the conflict, combining new platforms with older missile types. While Washington claims to have achieved air superiority over Iran, the battlefield remains contested, with dozens of MQ-9 Reaper drones and several manned aircraft reportedly shot down. These losses highlight the persistent risks to pilots, aircraft, and forward-based assets, even under declared ceasefire. Hypersonic weapons are therefore seen as a way to strike high-value targets from much safer distances while still maintaining a high degree of effectiveness. This push for hypersonic deployment came even as President Trump, on April 29, claimed US control of the Strait of Hormuz and portrayed Iran as increasingly cornered in the naval confrontation.
We're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And we've knocked out their Navy, we've knocked out their Air Force, we've knocked out their anti-aircraft, everything, apparatus, everything they have, their radar, they have very little left. And they have some missiles, a small percentage. They have a small percentage of missile-making facilities. We knocked out about 80% of them. The rest could come very quickly if we don't make a deal. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They know it, and just about everybody else does.
President, regarding Iran, how long are you prepared to maintain the blockade? Could that go several more months?
Well, the blockade is genius, okay? The blockade has been 100% foolproof. It shows how good our Navy is, I can tell you that. Nobody's going to play games. We have the greatest military in the world, and I built much of it during my first term, and we've been building it since. And the greatest anywhere in the world, nobody even close. And And you see that whether it's Venezuela, and they have a good military in Venezuela, but it was over in one day. It was actually over in about 48 minutes. Iran, the same thing. I mean, militarily, we've wiped them out. They have no military left. It's all the Navy's at the bottom of the sea. The Air Force is never going to fly again. We've got an amazing military. Now they have to cry uncle. That's all they have to do. Just say, we give up. We give up. But their economy is really in trouble. So it's a dead economy.
Will Operation Economic Fury and the blockade get Iran to nuclear talks fast enough, or do you think another wave of strikes will be necessary?
I don't know. It depends. We have talks. We're having talks with them now, and we're not flying anymore with 18-hour flights every time we want to see a piece of paper. We're doing it telephonically, and it's very nice. I make a call, or I have my people make a call, and you know the answer. I always like face-to-face. I consider it better. But when you have to fly 18 hours every time you want to have a meeting, and you know what the meeting's all about, and you know they're going to give you a piece of paper that you don't like before you even leave, it's ridiculous. They've come a long way. The question is whether or not they're going to go far enough. So at this moment, there will never be a deal unless they agree that there will be no nuclear weapons.
Iran's firm defiance against the U.S. naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz continues to shape the escalating standoff at sea. On April 28, Tehran issued a strong statement underlining what it described as its non-negotiable red lines regarding the strategic waterway. Iran reiterated that it is not a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and is therefore not bound by its provisions. The clarification was delivered through Iran's permanent mission to the United Nations in an official statement released the same day. Tehran defended its actions in the strait, asserting that it has the sovereign right to secure and regulate activity within its territorial waters. Iran further warned that any disruption to maritime trade and global oil flows should be attributed solely to U.S. actions in the region. The Iranian mission also accused Washington of unlawful conduct in Hormuz, stating that such moves risk destabilizing international navigation. The statement read, and I quote, "Iran is not a party to the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Therefore, it is not bound by its treaty-based provisions. As the main coastal state within whose territorial sea the Strait of Hormuz lies, Iran has the legitimate and legal right to take necessary and proportionate measures to address emerging security threats, ensure safe navigation, and prevent the misuse of the Strait of Hormuz for hostile or military purposes. Any disruption to maritime transport in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, and its consequences, lie with the U.S., whose unlawful actions endanger international navigation. Lasting stability and security in the Persian Gulf and the wider region can only be achieved through a durable and permanent cessation of aggression against Iran, supplemented by credible guarantees of non-recurrence, and full respect for the legitimate sovereign rights and interests of Iran." End quote. Amid the blockade, a Japanese-owned supertanker successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz in one of the rare crude-carrying passages through the choke point during the conflict. The Idemitsu Maru became the first Japanese-owned crude tanker to cross Hormuz since February 28, according to reporting carried by Press TV and other outlets tracking the passage. Reports said the vessel's passage required coordination with Tehran, underscoring Iran's de facto control over transit conditions in the area during the blockade. That made the transit especially notable because Japan is a major U.S. ally and depends heavily on Gulf energy flows even as sanctions and conflict have disrupted normal routes. Japan sources roughly 95% of its oil imports from West Asia, making the disruption caused by the war especially significant for Tokyo's energy security. The vessel was carrying about 2 million barrels of crude oil when it made the rare wartime passage through Hormuz. The ship is a Panama-flagged VLCC managed by the tanker arm of Japanese refiner Idemitsu Kozen. Tracking reports said the tanker began moving on April 27 after remaining stationary off the UAE coast for more than a week. It was transporting crude loaded from Saudi Arabia's Jumeirah terminal in early March before the delayed exit through Hormuz. Ship tracking data also indicated that it briefly altered course near Iran's Keshem and Larak Islands before continuing eastward out of the strait.